Arizona Cardinals beat the New York Jets. The Cardinals remain in first place in the NFC West, 31-6 over the Jets, who fall to 3-7.
The Jets, who apparently before the game had been celebrating the losses of Denver and whoever else was relevant in the AFC, who lost.
Indianapolis?
Yes, because they were like, yeah, it gives us a chance. That's what we need. Get right back in this.
Where'd you see that? They're scoreboard watching in Week 10?
Yeah, before their game.
As a 3-6 team, they're scoreboard watching?
Uh-huh. Yeah.
That's absurd.
Yeah, well, it's even more absurd when you then get murdered 31-6.
This is where I do blame everything on Rodgers. Just blame it all on Rodgers.
Did you see Garrett Wilson's quotes? I gotta find these. Talk amongst yourselves for a second.
Let's start. Well, do you want to talk Jets futility? You're pulling up Jets quotes, so let's talk Jets futility right now.
Here we go. Got it. Zach Rosenblatt tweeted Garrett Wilson on if he was shocked by the Jets' performance today. Is it shocking given how we practiced during the week, how we went about stuff during training camp, what we have in this locker room? Yeah, it's shocking. But as far as being out there and just the vibes and how it felt, yeah, it sounds about right. So this is like, I mean, you know, part of why you bring in Rodgers is like surely to be able to galvanize, to lead, to inspire on the field as opposed to just somewhere in the building, you know? Like this was when you watch the Hard Knocks, the training camp with the Jets, right? The aura around Rodgers, like this guy can do no wrong. He's a god. This is one of the best players of all time. Like everybody seemed just jazzed by Rodgers being around the building. And apparently that's all disappeared now that they're on the field.
I've been trying to convey a couple things all season without going full shouty show, right? Without going, well, our Rodgers is cooked and he's got to retire and all that stuff, because there's physical stuff that he does that is still very impressive. Has he lost a step mobility-wise? Absolutely, right? Like when he's under pressure, it's kind of like what we talked about Russ a couple years ago, right? He's just not breaking away and he's not going to evade pressure the way he normally does. But I think there has been something with Rodgers, and I thought we saw this in Green Bay pre-Matt LaFleur, where he's not leading the team well. And I'm not – it's goofy to blame the quarterback for like defensive mishaps and special teams mishaps, but those have kind of followed Rodgers a little bit to the Jets, haven't they? Like they had an unbelievable defense for 2 years, and now it's been horrible. And I know there's different circumstances. Every year is different. Some injuries, some player turnover and everything. Defensive, special teams mishaps. Like how much of that is him being, you know, the biggest voice in the room, so to speak, instead of the coaches? Like how much of that is actually on him? I've been trying to convey this over the last few weeks. In addition to the offense just being a low percentage offense, it does feel a lot like 2018, where we said Mike McCarthy's offense has run stale, which was really code for Aaron Rodgers' offense that he's very, very comfortable with, has run stale. And it became less stale when Matt LaFleur came in. So again, I feel like I'm repeating myself every week. And the signs of life that we saw last week with the Jets, I've tried to hint at this last week, was one-handed catches from Garrett Wilson. And they were every single big play that the Jets create feels like a low percentage heave. And this is where I'm saying Rodgers' physical ability is still impressive. He can still make these tight window throws. They're just naturally low percentage. There's no easy button in this offense. There's nothing schemed up. There's not schemed up deep shots. It's just, hey, I'm going to chuck it up, and I'm either going to throw this pinpoint pass, which I'm still capable of here and there, or Garrett Wilson's going to go make one-handed catches. And if he does, we're going to put some points on the board. And that's the Jets' offense this year. So yesterday they made none of those plays.
Yeah.
Barely completed, one pass beyond 10 yards, and it was awful. And maybe it is all Rodgers' fault.
Devontae Adams had 31 yards from 13 targets. That's pretty hard to do for a guy as good as he is.
Mike Williams had a 32-yard touchdown.
Right, on one target.
Former Jet.
Right.
Yeah.
Not great.
And we'll get to all the credit in the world to the Cardinals in a minute, too.
Yeah, absolutely. It is, I do think, I mean, it's hard to separate like where they are in terms of record and how far kind of behind the chains they are in the season with the sort of the body language, if you like, of what's going on. But I do think it doesn't reflect well on Rodgers that he certainly doesn't seem like he's inspiring belief in anybody else, right? And that was something that did seem to come across on that Hard Knocks, was the belief in the building for the first time relative to like where they were with Zach Wilson there was amazing. Like everyone had complete and total faith that it's all different now. Rodgers is amazing. We're going to cook. We're going to take the league by storm. None of that's there anymore. None of them believe. Like they're maybe saying it out loud, like, yeah, we could go on a run. Clearly nobody believes that, or certainly didn't in this game. And you would think that's kind of an indictment on Rodgers. If he's not able to inspire that from people, then that's a pretty significant part of what you're supposed to be bringing to the table that's not there. And now you're right. You then are relying on him executing at a flawless level, which he's not doing, even independent of the fact that the offense appears to be stuck in hard mode. So everything was pretty rough for the Jets offense. They didn't get anything going. And I think maybe the biggest problem, though, is that this type of defensive performance has maybe been coming for a bit, where it's not as good, the defense, as it was a year ago. They don't have the depth, and they've been skating by a little bit on individual performances. And the Cardinals were basically just flawless on offense in this game. The Jets defense, therefore, got wrecked. And so what would have been maybe in a different week, a low-scoring, tight game where the Jets were underperforming, just ended up as a beatdown.
One more stat to just pile on the Jets before we give the Cardinals all the credit in the world. Football perspective again, FBG Chase on X. Jets fan. He pulls out Jets futility stats throughout the years. From 2021 to 2023, that's the Zach Wilson era, for those keeping track at home. The Jets averaged 17.6. He put 176, but say 176 points in 2103 passing yards during the first 10 games of the season. The 24 Jets have scored 177 points, so 0.1 more points per game, from 17.6 to 17.7, and little over 100 more passing yards during the first 10 games. So the first 10 games of Aaron Rodgers effectively as the Jets starter has had the same point production and passing yard production as the Zach Wilson era.
With massive upgrades.
With 3 years of Zach Wilson era, which,
right.
by the way, was the era, which means there's a couple Flacco starts in there.
Right.
There's a Mike White start in. Like Mike White has put together the best Jets quarterback games
which were all
of the last 4 years.
which all dragged that number upwards.
Yes.
But this is with upgrades, like with bringing in Devontae Adams.
They also, like we talked about in the preview show, how their entire offensive line was on the injury report, but they all played. They all started. Tyron Smith ended up getting hurt. They all were out there. And the first time they actually had all those guys together. So it was all bad.
Yeah.
And the Cardinals look more and more legit every single week.
The Cardinals look fantastic in this game. I mean, we might have to conclude at this point that they're just good as opposed to unpredictable. I mean, this is now 4 straight games where they've looked really impressive. They had one of those games, like immediately right off the bat, James Conner has a big catch and run play, but Trey McBride was phenomenal. Kyler Murray was basically unstoppable with his play. What did he end up with? 22 of 24 for 266 yards and a passing touchdown. At one point, I don't know what he finished with, but he broke the record, the Arizona record for most consecutive completions, which was 17, I think, when he did it. This is a franchise, remember, that had Kurt Warner. I mean, Kurt Warner tends to own those types of records for teams that he's played for. So Kyler Murray was ridiculous. The Jets couldn't stop them at all. Marvin Harrison making some plays. I mean, their offense looked absolutely ridiculous.
Fascinating game flow type of game, too. The Cardinals only had 7 possessions, and the Jets only had 6. So the Cardinals scored touchdowns on their first 3 possessions, then a field goal on the 4th, and a touchdown on the 5th. So they scored on their first 5. Then they punted in the 4th quarter. And then the last possession just ended the game. And the Jets had 6 possessions. So it was like a very, a lot of times you get 10, 11, 12 possessions in a game sometimes. Very few possessions on both sides. And the Jets had 4 different drives of 10-plus plays. So again, it's just this, from a Jets perspective, dink and dunk offense with no big plays. So they're just chewing clock and not putting points on the board.
The Cardinals had fewer first downs yesterday than the Minnesota Vikings did, and the Cardinals had 31 points in the third quarter. The Vikings had 12 points in the entire game because they kept turning it over.
It's fun football stuff. Trey McBride had another highlight reel play, breaks free from a sack, then leaps over a defender almost in stride. As someone said to me, a forward leap over someone, yawn, basically that's nothing after Saquon last week, but still impressive from Trey McBride as a tight end.
Right.
Him and Marvin Harrison Jr., and what James Conner has done, and what Trey Benson did running the ball. I mean, you're starting to see the Cardinals, more complementary playmakers. Michael Wilson with a couple nice catches in this game. I mean,
everybody looked good. I mean, even
good.
Random cameo appearances from Amari DiMercato in the backfield. Everything worked on offense for them. It was just a basically flawless performance, start to finish, from that perspective. And their defense has been really impressive as well. I mean, this group that is still effectively this no-name defense. It's a no-name defense where one of their best players in the Barbarian is down with an ACL injury, and they are still able to cause all kinds of problems for the Jets. Like, this has been a really impressive performance from Arizona.
Yeah, it has been. Their defense flies around. I mean, they had an unblocked sack on Rodgers. I mean, there's some of the teams that have had protection issues. It does feel like they're just deep-rooted all season. And I go back to the Kurt Warner's tweets. They're just funny to me because he seems like so frustrated watching offensive football when he's watching film, and he doesn't name names a ton, but he's like, I see the same teams break, same stuff, same protection issues, same. And it's the Bears, and it's the Browns, and it's the Jets. It's the Jets with the same issues. No blitz answers and not being on the same page. And the Cardinals have done just a really good job, man, of scheming up pressure and I think working around the fact that they don't have a ton of one-on-one, pass rush winners up front. But they've done a great job. They've played hard. They've played well. And then, they have these offensive playmakers that continue to emerge.
Yeah,
so I'm impressed with the Cardinals.
Their offense has been amazing. I mean, so heading into the season, I was quite high on the Cardinals' offense because I think it did have the pieces to come together and be a really formidable unit. I'm so much more impressed than I thought I was going to be with their defense, though. Like
Agreed.
That group looks like one of the worst groups in the league on paper. They are in this game basically playing dime defense with this group of defensive backs, only one of which is like a recognized name by most people. Like Budda Baker, we know is a good do-it-all safety, but they're cornerbacks in that dime package. They're running four corners. Sean Murphy-Bunting, who is good in the slot, tends to not be great when he's played outside in his career so far. Starling Thomas V, who, unless you were deep into the draft process at the time, you are not aware of him as a kind of player who is or was going to be.
Liked him.
Right. Max Melton, Bo Melton's brother, right? Decent rookie, right, in his own right, yes, as a corner. Garrett Williams, who was coming off an ACL injury when they drafted him. This is not a group that should be keeping its head above water, and it's actually doing better than that. It's dominating people.
Just traded for Baron Browning too, who you like, played 18 snaps. So I'll repeat it again. I'm interested to see, nothing against those guys, because I think they are playing pretty well, especially in recent weeks. If they add more talent to the defensive side of the ball, what Arizona is capable of doing going forward. And
that group is also, but it's collectively very young. So, I mean, they might have just stumbled on some players that are going to be better than people thought they were.
For sure. And
so, particularly Garrett Williams, I really liked as a prospect. The ACL injury caused him to fall, but he had some real ball skills. Max Melton, a lot of people liked. Starling Thomas was a lot of people's sort of deep sleeper in that draft. So it's not like these are completely untalented players that had no prospects, but when you put them all in the same secondary, it shouldn't be working. Thanks for watching all the way to the end of our video.
For more great content, click here to subscribe and here to watch another video. We'll see you again soon.